This time we'll be looking at what the front pages are saying from select newspapers this morning. And as is a tradition, we would begin with the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust is staying with the incidents in the Plateau. Outrage over Plateau massacre as death toll hits 155. Northern elders question military capacity and urges change of tactics. Terrorists occupying 64 communities in Plateau, Mafwang, and that's the governor. Smoke out attackers, tinubu orders security agencies. And farming communities, Miyeti Allah trade blames over killings. You'll find the details of this on pages for...
The same runaround.
Yeah.
The same runaround.
Absolutely. The details are there on pages 4 and 6, I think. Yeah, moving on to other story. Tudimbini finds unity in Christmas celebration amidst mourning. 2023, how fast data depletion and bad network slows 5G dominated Nigeria telecom sector. I mean,
we can talk about bad data or bad network every day of the year.
It's crazy.
And it's not improving.
You know.
And I wonder why the NCC is, barely even giving these telecom providers a slap on the wrist. Because we need to do a lot more to keep them honest, to keep them, so customers get value for money.
I can't tell you
the drop calls
that there is anything significant about my data experience or telecom experience different from what it used to be before the advent of 5G. We hear about the Internet of Things in other places. That's not exactly happening. You can barely hold down a 5-minute call here. Moving on to other stories. Police nab 18-year-old female student who worked as bandit informant. To other stories, pipeline explosion kills 20 persons in rivers. Smugglers forfeit 3 billion vehicles in 9 months, despite ban. And hackers stole $2 billion, if you like, in the case of Nigeria, 2 trillion naira worth of cryptocurrencies in 2023. These are the reasons why sovereign governments are very afraid.
What are your thoughts about CBN readmitting or its position on cryptocurrency?
It makes you shivers. Well, not exactly a wrong move, because you don't want to leave these guys completely out of your purview. You want to be able to have an oversight on what they do, and
have
the only way to
control
do that
and regulate
is to draw them a bit closer. But how they are going to stitch those controls around what these guys do is what we do not understand as of yet. But we hope that they have an idea of what they do, because what's happening clearly is that regulation is chasing innovation
exactly.
in this case.
But isn't that always the case, though?
Well,
you innovate something and you find a way to regulate it. Control it.
Traders lose millions as fire raises Kano market. We had that as part of our reports earlier. Very pathetic situation there from Kano.
Exactly.
And that's it on the front page of the Daily Trust.
The Punch is up next. Let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper for today, December 27. President meets governors, seeks stronger federal government states collaboration. And Nigeria's diaspora remittances will exceed $20 billion will exceed $20 billion in 2023. I think 2023 is almost a wrap.
I mean, we've been at this $20 billion for so long. You think that's a no-brainer.
Well, shouldn't we have some sort of figure already? Because the year is almost out.
Basically, we're just counting days or hours.
Do we have to wait until the first quarter of next year to get a sense of
we should be getting those figures now? Yeah.
Okay. According to the World Bank, that is. National Assembly reconvenes Friday to pass budget December 30th. So it seems like they're on course to do what they plan to do. The big story, of course, is on the Plateau killings or massacre. Outrage as Plateau massacre claims 150 over 10,000 displaced. Look at the similarity between the headlines on the Punch newspaper and the Daily Trust. It's almost the same thing, except for the numbers. Outrage over the Plateau massacre. And some of the writers say, I lost my father, 10 other family members to attack. Just photographer limits. Now, these are the consequences of, attacks like this. This is how disruptive it can be. You can imagine that individual's life would never be the same ever again going forward. And this is the cost of such carnage at this scale. President orders killers arrest. Can Northern Governors, elders, Saraki condemn attacks? Why is Saraki separate from other people? Anyway, maybe he gets a special mention because of his status as a former Senate president.
Yeah.
You can see some of the pictures there, and some of them are just too graphic to show. But you can see a picture of one of the survivors with some injuries to her hands, and you can see, properties being burned down. This was just 2 days before Christmas. Some of it just on Christmas Day, some of it on the eve of Christmas, and it's just a very heart-wrenching story. Federal government plans fresh regulations for OPay, MoneyPoint, and others. Okay, I hope stories like this doesn't send users into a frenzy, because the moment you hear regulations, you begin to wonder, is my money safe? And I think it's not fair on some of these operators, because they seem to be doing some of these fintech,
the reason why some of the banks are sitting up.
Exactly, and I think that stories like this tend to put them in a bad situation where all of a sudden you get to worry, is my money safe? And the moment customers begin to worry like that, you lose business.
That's right.
And even though regulation is a welcome development, as long as it does not stifle the growth of some of these businesses. 25 killed in Rivers illegal refinery explosion. So I guess it's connected with that story about the pipeline explosion. 300 Nigerians killed in foreign lands. Blood cries endlessly for justice. And that is it on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
All right, moving on to the Sun newspaper this morning. Slightly away from the other two. The major story here says power struggle in PDP intensifies. With the riders, Atiku's men, new generation members fight for control. Supreme Court cases stall search for IU's replacement. An opposition party may hold mini convention in February. There's so much happening in the PDP. They don't seem to have recovered from the shock of the last election.
No, I don't think it's right from the G7 governors back in 2014.
That's right.
PDP has never been the same again.
Never.
And they need to do some soul searching, reorganize themselves, and because we need a viable opposition party.
And basically some flushing out.
Yeah.
They are guilty of some of the accusations
they need to purge. They need to be honest with themselves, be transparent, and hold themselves accountable, because without accountability, they're going to repeat the same mistakes over and over again.
Absolutely.
Maybe they owe former President Goodluck Jonathan an apology also. Who knows?
All right, I hope they are listening. That's free consultations from Abdul coming out this morning. And to other stories, President to Fabura, thank you for peaceful resolution of the political crisis in Rivers. I hope we have seen the end of those crises, as it were. I saw footages of Wike in Rivers, showing up at some party ground where he had a dig and took chairs from...
it seemed that he's relentless with his attacks on Rivers elders and what's happening in Rivers State. But the governor came out just days ago and said, listen, he's committed to implementing the resolutions of the peace accord or peace deal negotiated by President Bola Tinubu, even though we understand that the PDP in Rivers State are not particularly happy with the governor's body language.
That's right.
So
some have
Governor
described
Fubara
it as throwing everybody under the bus.
Yeah, he's trading under very,
Yeah. And similar to some of the stories we have read from other papers, Tinubu, Northern governors, senators, Khan, Saraki, Obi, furious over Christmas Eve attack in Plateau as death toll rises. How attackers killed 157, ransacked 12 villages, razed 221 houses, 27 motorcycles, 8 vehicles. This is coming from Lubo, Khan chairman. And the Northern Governors Forum calls for increased security measures. To other stories, Ohaneze taxed Southeast governors on security. 6 died, 65 injured in Boxing Day auto accidents in Lagos and Kaduna. And police confirm rise in killings, death of inspector in Edo court clashes. And to other stories, 8 arrested over murder of Enugu monarch on Christmas Eve. Those are the stories on the front page of the Daily Sun.
This Day is up next. Let's take a look at the front page of the This Day newspaper for today. Murphy set to track Nigeria's real estate, solid minerals, oil and gas assets globally. Upbeat assets under management will surpass 100 billion target. Just realized that this is, a story about a setup that is trying to scale up its asset under management. So good for them. In other news, Okpeyemi Bamidele, National Assembly will pass 2024 appropriation bill on Saturday. Says federal government will go after economic saboteurs next year. So they get a pass this year, or we're not catching them this year until next year. Okay. Incensed by Plateau Xmas Eve carnage, Tinubu orders security to go after killers. I don't think this is the story. If you ask me, the story is about the death toll, the story is about what has happened, not the reaction to it. But anyway, you get some of the details in the riders. It says, tells governors, nation's peace, stability is collective responsibility. Mutwan says, it's disheartening losing lives to senseless, unprovoked attacks. Northern Governors Forum, Northern leaders, CAN, Abbas, Obi, Amnesty International, others mourn, condemn incident. Police put death toll at over 79, says it's over, observers say it's over 140. I think this day is catching up, it's playing catch up with the figures. It's a lot more than that. You can see the president there with a grand smile on his face, and then with the governor's visit to the president in his residence in Lagos yesterday. So let's just quickly highlight some of the stories then, and perhaps banter on it. Mr. Ben Sherman has decided to abandon us today, and I guess he will have some explanation to do next week when he shows up for the newspaper review. But in talking about, the whole Plateau attacks, the killings, the massacre, it goes without saying that you expect there to for us to be in national mourning, so to say, but we've seen so many cases like this come and go without the usual outrage. I mean, there's outrage on the papers, on the posts of political leaders, on their social media platforms, but one would say, listen, there was no outrage when there was Tudumbiri, there was no outrage years ago when other situations happened. Do you get a sense that we're normalizing developments like this? So much to say that, it doesn't unsettle us when things like this happen. Yes, we're angry, but we're unable to show it in a way that really counts.
Absolutely. And the optics are there for us, to see from the way the government had reacted to it. It's the usual statements. The wordings are not even changing. From the way the president, personally has reacted to it in the midst of what is happening, you are seeing some kind of solidarity visit to the president.
Yeah. And
they have to celebrate it on the front, on the pages of the newspaper or in the media, and you begin to ask yourself, what is even the relevance, of those kind of visits?
Yeah.
In the
at
face
a time
of,
like this.
In the face of
the visit was yesterday, right?
Yeah,
yesterday was Tuesday.
That would be the third day of the attack.
Exactly.
You would have thought that with an attack, with what we are seeing in Gaza, and that is not to minimize the humanitarian situation in Gaza. You don't get this kind of loss of life within that space of time in a non-conflict environment. It's not a warring environment as the case may be. So it betrays everything that we should stand for. It shows clearly that we have normalized it. I got a call from a number of friends from outside this country yesterday who were worried about the escalating attacks and the sheer number of deaths. And they were surprised that talking to me, I did not sound as outraged as they are.
Yeah.
I had to do a reflection myself, and I said, why am I finding it difficult, to be triggered, the way it would be those days when you get any of this stuff? It's because of the way we have treated the previous attacks and sort of normalized these attacks. We try to explain them away. You heard the Deputy Minister of Defense or Minister of State for Defense, whichever one is that nomenclature. You heard the Vice President when they showed up before the victims of the last military shelling to say it is an act of God, it was predestined to happen, and we should just take it like that. And basically explains the way.
And developments like this numb us to a point where you get a sense, it's not just normalization, an acceptance, if you will, of this sort of anomaly, that this is now part of our everyday life now. It is almost expected. I dare say it is almost expected that something bad is going to happen, and that's just life in Nigeria. And I must say that we've lowered the bar so low to a point where people in power can escape accountability by giving us excuses, like giving directives after much damage has been done, when we do know that the standard operating procedure is for the police, for the military, and every other security agency out there to work around the clock to prevent situations like this from happening. And if they do happen, the only acceptable narrative is we have apprehended the perpetrators and we're going to prosecute them so that it will serve as not just justice to those who have been wronged, but also as a deterrent, so that people know that when you commit heinous crimes like this in Nigeria, it is not going to go unpunished. But what we've seen over the years is that people do this on a regular basis, and they get the feeling that they can get away with it, and unfortunately, that is what we see happen over and over year in.
Another aspect of all of the attacks is how badly we have treated victims in this country. Starting from the train attack. Well, there had been several attacks before those, of how families have to sell everything to basically meet the ransom of family members, and some of them had to lose their jobs, haven't stayed away for so long, and all of that. And when their these family members returned, I'm talking about the kidnapped victims, they were led to their fate. No trauma counseling was available to them, and all of that. We saw the military killing. So it just like one of the experts said. So you build up that resentment against the state. It has never been there for you, and neither provide institutions that sort of help you heal from this trauma. It's something we have to improve, starting with what's happening in Plateau, so that we can heal from the past. That's the much that we can bring to you this morning. I hope we have been able to provide you some education, some entertainment, and of course some information useful to enable you have a very fantastic day. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. Let's do this again tomorrow.
I'm pretty sure there was zero entertainment value in the conversations today. There were some very honest and insightful conversations though. But thank you very much as always for your time and company. Daybreak returns tomorrow live at 8. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Good morning.